Hi, everyone. My name is Cavison. I'm the head of product marketing for LTI's Data Products Group, and I'll be your moderator today, but I just wanted to let you know we're going to give folks a few minutes to filter in, so we'll start in just a few minutes. We're just giving folks a couple more minutes to filter in, and then we'll get started. Welcome aboard. Okay, I think that we are ready to get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Vince Cavison. I'm the head of product marketing for LTI's Data Products Group, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. We have a lot of insightful content to share with you today related to how to achieve fast and scalable enterprise-level data ops for your business, and we're really excited to get started. First, I want to go through a couple housekeeping points. All attendees are muted upon entry and will remain muted throughout the webinar. However, there is a Q&A, there's a chat box, which I'm sure you can see on the side of your screen, where we encourage you to enter any questions or comments you may have as we go through the slides. We've actually set aside about a third of the time at the end to go through those. So as you enter them, I'll be sort of curating them, and we'll moderate that discussion at the end of the webinar. We'll also have a couple of live polls over the course of the webinar, which we'd really appreciate it if you could give us your opinions on those. And let me go ahead and introduce our speakers. So today we have, kicking us off, today we have Sachin Vyas, the Vice President and the head of the LTI Mosaic product suite. We have following him Andrew Reichman, the Director of Market Intelligence for Snowflake, and a very special guest, Jeff Painter, the Director of Analytics Solutions Delivery from Clarios. Clarios is a joint client of LTI's and Snowflake's. And Jeff is going to give us an overview of a really interesting journey that he and his team recently undertook to implement an enterprise-class data ops platform on the Snowflake Data Cloud and LTI's Mosaic Decisions. I think that is all the that's all the stuff I need to tell you. Let me turn it over to Sachin to get us rolling. Sachin.
Vince, can you hear me?
Yes,
okay?
We can.
Thanks, Vince. Hi, everyone. Thank you again for joining us here today. I'll just get started with what we are going to talk about today. Of course, we all know this and why it's really crucial to make right decisions about designing our data platforms. I will be talking about what to consider in framing your decisions about it, especially given the complex and varied expectations people have from data platforms and how costly it can get if it doesn't work out at all. There is no doubt that cloud is actually the most significant platform shifts in the history of computing, and it applies to data platforms as well. Many companies are already on it and adopting the current generation of data platform that are cloud native and that fulfill all the gaps that we have seen from the previous generations of platforms, like all types of workloads, data engineering, data sciences, streaming, and so on. Why is then we are already seeing some companies repatriating to on-prem infrastructure, especially when cloud is actually best suited for speed and scale. Maybe there are two main things, lower than desired benefits and maybe higher than expected costs. Now, there can be different aspects for transactional systems, but from data analytics perspective, core issues seems to be the complexities involved in implementing data operations at scale, and maybe the approach we are taking in adopting the cloud for data. Now, if you really look at why our data platforms are cloud native, but our approach is somewhat similar to what it has been for other generations or earlier generations of data platform, characterized by mainly four things. Number one, they are large centralized platform for data across the enterprise, data lake, data warehouse. Number two, a suite of common and centralized ETL, ELT processes pipeline across the organization. Number three, they are more optimized based on data processing stages, such as staging data, curated data, data marts, and so on and so forth. And number four, finally, they are less domain-oriented in their design. And domain is largely the part which is aftermath to the build-out of the platform. Now, this approach, of course, benefits from the cost aspects in the short run by standardizing and centralizing all types of workload. While that is, of course, necessary to some level, but it doesn't seem to be sufficient because there are three core issues that still remain to be addressed in our opinion. Number one, which is scale. And scale is not about the volumes. I think that is addressed. It is all about the rate of change of data landscape, the rate of change of use cases types, also the changes in expectations by consumers of data product. For example, it's not only that people looking at dashboard offline and making decisions, but now the data products are expected to be embedded in transactional systems per se. Number two is speed. And speed is also not about only provisioning compute and other resources faster, which is essential, but it's more about time to outcomes. How fast enterprise-wide data products can be created and put to use. With current approach, it takes longer possibly because it needs upgrades and into the centralized processes and systems to get the data products out. And speed to outcome is also compromised by requiring specialized skills. If you still need platform or tech people to deliver data products, then we cannot possibly get desired benefits as fast as we want and maybe as cost effectively as we want them to be. We possibly need more sophisticated capabilities as extensions to our data stack. And that leads to one idea of rethinking enterprise data platforms with these 5 shifts. And this is heavily influenced by data mesh approach that you may have already seen. Number 1 and number 2 on the left are actually more about bringing data use and consumption at the forefront. It's not just processing and organizing for ingestion, extraction, loading, etc. While that's the core of it, but the focus has to shift from more towards discovery and serving of data and data products easily within the company. On the right hand side, number 3 and 4 are more about empowering users and users beyond platform and tech teams, especially the domain teams that are data savvy, may not be tech savvy, and teams that are eventually accountable for the business being data driven. Finally, all of this put together, number 5 is all about driving towards an ecosystem of data products within a company at the organization level, as well as at the level of individual subject areas or groups. For example, supply chain group in manufacturing unit, or artist onboarding teams in a media company, and so on. One underlying objective, of course, by doing all of this is to build accountability of data and data products with the right types of owners within the company. Now, this is rather simplified representation of how to organize data platform stacks. Bottom part is more about organizing capabilities, and the top part is more about how data products can be more discoverable and consumable, easy to consume at the organization level. Cloud platforms, of course, are inherently very well suited to distribution of data, consumption, and hence the overall value from data. But again, the right balance and scalability is required for 3 foundational areas: DataOps, SecOps, and FinOps, something that we are going to talk about in next couple of slides. First, let's look at the idea of next generation data ops, what to expect from it. With a unified cloud data platform at the core, which is ready to address all types of workloads and building things around it. Number 1, which is data as a product. Now, this is a thought process where DataOps platforms need to offer the capabilities and tools that are required to simplify the user journeys to build data products and continuously curate them and making them easily discoverable and sort of seamlessly consumable by the right users. Number 2, which is decoupling it from the large enterprise centralized suite of ETL processes. It should provide an ability to create data product with its own data lifecycle and at the project level in a decoupled manner. 3, which is more domain alignment from the beginning, recognizing the domain aspects of metadata involved in sources, products, business vocabulary, alongside and actually embedded in data pipelines and processes that actually build or deliver the data products. And lastly, number 4, which is more sort of decentralized capability to build and operate data product ecosystem while establishing centralized governance such as standards, infrastructure provisioning, maybe chargeback mechanisms, and all that. I would like to take some views from Jeff on this sort of idea of next-gen data ops platform, and maybe especially about data as a product, Jeff, if you can add your views.
Sure. I mean, you'll hear more when I talk about our journey in a moment, but for us, changing over to a data ops mentality allowed us to, first of all, reduce multiple copies of the same data across multiple silos. It allows us to separately schedule, govern, and control access on the data. I mean, a lot of the things that you're pointing out, we've realized in our journey from where we were to where we are now. The biggest one for us is that it does allow us to align much more closely with our business partners in the way new demand flows into our organization and our ability to turn it around quickly.
Thanks, Jake.
Okay.
Right.
Thanks, Sachin. So this is our first poll, and you should be able to see the the poll entry mechanism on the side of your screen. So the question here is, from your perspective, which are the highest priority data ops initiatives? Sachin's talked through them just now. Could you please go ahead and select whichever one through 5 you think is the most highest priority? And we'll give a few seconds for people to complete that, and then we'll go ahead. Okay, looks like we've got, no, we're still getting answers. While we're getting answers, I'm going to share one of the data science jokes that I found earlier. A SQL query walks into a bar, walks up to 2 tables and asks, "Can I join you?" Thank you, Andrew, even though you're on mute. Thank you, yeah.
You can hear
I heard
my
the groaning
and
all the way down here. Collective groan of all the attendees.
You know, it's cool to see the poll results here. You know, it's more about using data and doing cool stuff. You know, that to me, the last 2 is more about locking things down and control. And it's exciting to see that people, you know, focusing their energy on ways that they can use data and build products and share and, you know, allow self-service. To me, that's cool. That's not what I would have expected.
So data as a product ecosystem is the far and away the biggest answer we're getting so far.
Yeah, I'm happy to see that.
Yeah, I think we can probably forge ahead. Looks like most people have.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, what I think Andrew said is absolutely right. This is very, very interesting. And although, you know, data product ecosystem at the organization level, as well as letting people build their own data products, are the 2 top answers, I think. Having said that, there are 2 foundational components, FinOps and SecOps, which are also necessary to be looked at. And they are extensive topics in themselves, but today we'll just look at a few fundamental things here. From the FinOps perspective, as the ownership of data products, as some of you already have put that as an answer, shifts to more domain teams, more financial accountability of data, and return on investment from data products also shifts beyond centralized platform and platform teams. So, you know, better understanding of total costs involved, not only for infrastructure, but some other inherent cost in data platforms, such as data acquisition, development time for data products, reusability, discoverability, and all of those. There are inherent costs associated with that. And so having the right approach for financial chargeback at the organization level. These are some very key additional expected capabilities to improve the overall efficiency of data ops, to be able to serve those 2 top needs that we saw in the poll today. That's from a FinOps perspective. Now, on the other side, which is SecOps side, which is again a large topic in itself, while we saw capabilities required to do, you know, to scale at speed from a data ops and the cloud platform perspective, there are at least 3 critical components from SecOps which actually need to be part of design from early on. While driving the data sharing, which is what it drives to ultimately, and as well as providing high accessibility to data by breaking silos in the company, the necessary data security aspects have to be baked in the data platform at the early stage. While all the flexibility to scale on demand almost invisibly is available now, there is possibly also a need of a geo-specific, you know, regulatory needs are again to be baked in the design of the cloud data platform from early on. So again, as I said, these are 2 big topics on themselves. But if you broadly put across data ops, FinOps, and SecOps, and the expectation from those 3 topics at the core of our data platforms, the one question comes around: whether to build this or buy this. And I think I would now request Andrew to give his views on this specific topic. Andrew?
Yeah, thanks so much, Sachin. It's great to get a chance to talk about this. And this is really where, you know, we come into the conversation with LTI. You know, we're really excited to be the platform that can enable a lot of the work that domain experts do with data. And, you know, Snowflake, for anybody that doesn't know, you know, we provide what we call the Snowflake Data Cloud. It's a comprehensive, hardened enterprise platform for users to do whatever they need to with their data. They can ingest to an unlimited scale repository and then query it, use it, publish it, share it, change it, all within a hardened, governed environment that they really don't need to do themselves. So we're really at the heart of that build versus buy decision. And we came to the market at a time when there were not a lot of options for companies to get something that was ready to go. And many of the customers that we've worked with who had a lot of experience building a platform themselves have found that by using a hardened enterprise class solution for their data, they're able to focus on outcomes rather than starting from scratch and hoping that within several years they'll have something that might meet their needs. They can start day one building with data, using data, experimenting, querying, and really get to value faster, get more insight, get more innovation, and really be able to use their data to better advantage faster. When you don't have to tinker and build and do all of the component-based engineering, it really allows you to do that faster. Another thing that we find is that nothing stands still when you're working with data. The formats change, the volume always gets bigger and bigger. Your usage of it, the partners that you're using with it, and the business reality changes too, right? Your business can change in a moment. We've all seen this happen with COVID and with other major global events where the requirements change while you're standing on top of them. And so, when you build, you may be able to get something that works for a moment, but then continuously adapting it to meet those changing technology and business needs is tremendously challenging. And with our customers, we see that they're able to really respond to those challenges rather than focusing on continuously changing and adapting that platform underneath them. And then the last is people. It's so hard to get the right people in place. It's so hard to hire for obscure engineering needs, and those skills are really in high demand and not available in every market. And so with Snowflake users, we find that companies are able to focus their energy on using the data, understanding the data, doing better queries, getting better insight, rather than trying the really hard task of hiring people that can build a platform. We do that on behalf of our customers, and we still give them the extensibility that they need to build on top of it. But generally, that's done with a skill set that's more readily available among analysts and business decision makers. We make it easy for them to do that. So let's just dive in a little bit deeper into what that solution looks like. We start at the bottom with the cloud infrastructure. Snowflake runs exclusively on cloud. We believe that's a better decision for companies that regardless of how big the scale is, the change is too hard to accommodate companies starting at the data center level. So, we don't build our own data centers. We ride on top of the major cloud infrastructure providers. We run in the regions that they offer, and we use their primitives, right? So we start with the standard compute instances and object storage, and we weave those together into a hardened platform that has native high availability. We run across availability zones in all the cloud regions that we run. We decide which infrastructure components to use, which instance types, what gives the right ratio between compute memory and storage capacity and local cache and all of those things to make for a hardened solution. And customers don't need to test out new instance types. We continuously evaluate those infrastructure options available and build it together into a system that works. We do the clustering, we do the joining, and we pre-build it. When we go into a region, we build those instances and build a pool of them that are available for use, which allows customers to get instant scalability, right? They don't need to go provision an instance for the first time. When they need to expand their cluster, that capacity is available to them at all time. And then we build the services that manage that. The process of orchestrating that, it doesn't require a customer to go build orchestration routines. All they need to do is either turn on auto scaling and allow the system to grow and shrink as needed. They can do it on a schedule basis. They can do it on a manual basis. And really, there's a lot of flexibility, a lot of ways to go ahead and orchestrate the infrastructure. And then on top of that, that's where the DataOps layer comes in. We give customers the ability to integrate all those pieces, to get hardened governance and control who has access and who does not, with a clear and simple and effective, consistent role-based access control structure that's the same on any cloud that you want to use. We have the ETL. We make it easy to ingest data from a wide variety of sources with ETL partners or natively. We do quality control. We do all of that orchestration that I was talking about. And we have the ability to then take that data and share it out with individual named companies, with communities across an industry, or with the public, and give customers the flexibility to really do more with their data by sharing it with exactly who needs it, and allow those recipients to query live data and make sure that it's always fresh and it's always ready to go. And then on top of that, we have extensibility that allows customers to build their own functions easily and simply with the languages of their choice, as we're rolling out a new feature called Snowpark. And then with partners like LTI, who's been so amazing to work with, where they build on top of our platform and they really give our customers the ability to go in any direction that they need to get deep into data science and artificial intelligence. It's really exciting to see that we have this foundation that takes care of all of the work inside the basement, and then up top, when you're working with data, it's really a tremendous amount of flexibility and power that has the ability to move businesses forward, and it's exciting to see that in practice. Just want to contrast it. If you choose to build it yourself, every one of these aspects is on you, right? It can be tremendously difficult to weave together all of the different data types across all the different sources that they come from and the different ETL methodologies, to do data quality testing, to integrate it all, to orchestrate it all, to secure it, to do vulnerability testing and threat mitigation. If we identify a vulnerability from one customer's environment, it then flows across all of them. We do patches and upgrades, and it allows customers to focus on the data and not have to do that maintenance of the platform that can be tremendously difficult to hire for each individual user of data, which really is every company in the world, regardless of geography or industry. For every one of them to have to go hire for every one of these functions can be super challenging, and it really takes away the time that they could be spent working with the data itself. So I just wanted to address some of the misconceptions that we hear, some of the objections that people say of why they should not go towards a hardened enterprise class system. Sometimes companies will say, well, our needs are pretty basic. This is too big, it's too complicated. But in reality, those needs are growing. And it can be a very short trip from, well, we're pretty basic, to then all of a sudden there's one new aspect of your business that's capturing data, or there's a new partner, or there's a new line of business that can make those needs grow so fast. And what we find is that by starting early, while things are fairly simple, getting your head around that and putting it into a hardened system can really set you up for success, as inevitably those needs grow. Yes, there's an upfront price tag to buy a hardened system, as opposed to starting with cheap components. But the reality is that over time we see it's so much less expensive to use this hardened system when you take all of the costs into account. Lock-in is a concern. Companies think, oh, well, if I send something to a hardened platform, I'm not going to be able to move. But the reality is, because it works, because you know where the data is, and because we run on all the clouds, you get that platform of your choice and the cloud of your choice, you have an exit strategy in multiple different ways. Lock-in's tricky in this business. And part of the deal is, when something works, it can be hard to move away from. But the reality is, on Snowflake, we use standard SQL. Your data is not transformed, and it is yours. You own it, and we can't see it. So we find that customers have actually much more flexibility to change to a different platform. And we would hate to see a customer go, but it's actually not that hard to take the data that you have and simply copy it out and shut your Snowflake environment down, if that's the choice for customers. So we see, regardless of other factors, the power of being able to use your data is the best way to avoid lock-in. And complexity, yes, it's an enterprise class system, but the complexity of using Snowflake compared to a component-based approach is so much less. Our system isn't brittle. It doesn't depend on an expert making sure that each configuration and a long list of responsibilities is done just perfectly, or it's going to crash. We find we strike a really good balance between enough flexibility to do what you want to do, but not enough flexibility, not enough sort of open control to crash the system. So we find it's a really good mix, and many of our customers are really happy when they use it. And the phrase that I hear over and over again is, "It just works," and we're delighted to see that power that it brings to our customers. So, we have customers at Snowflake, and this is really one of my favorite things about being here. Our customers really get power. They get the ability to do things, and we see it across every region of the world, in every industry. Huge companies that you've heard of, small companies that are interesting and doing new things. And this is definitely the most exciting part of my job, is to hear these stories. And so, we have a few great examples of them here on the screen, but really what I'm so excited for this webinar is to get to Jeff. Jeff is with Clarios. That's a company that makes batteries for vehicles and is really innovating in a space that, as we all know from reading the news, is changing quite a bit as we see our country adapt to new infrastructure needs. So I'm really excited to hand this over to Jeff. Thanks so much for joining us, and would love to hear about some of the stuff that you're doing with the Snowflake LTI platform that you're running.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. So just a little bit about Clarios. We are the world leader in advanced energy storage solutions. We partner with our customers to meet increasing market demand for smarter applications on a global scale. We have 16,000 employees developing, manufacturing, and distributing batteries and different technologies for every type of vehicle. And we were born out of a business transaction between Johnson Controls and Brookfield Business Partners when Johnson Controls decided to sell the Power Solutions division. That happened back in 2019. And that is really the genesis and the very beginning of our journey down this DataOps path, because we leveraged that separation and all of the disentanglement of all of the systems between Johnson Controls and the Power Solutions, and soon to be Clarios, that had to take place as the catalyst for our change. And I'm going to kind of give you an idea of where we started, because it's really kind of underscoring what the DataOps shift for us has been able to allow us to do. So when we looked at separation, we really had three options. We could do a lift and shift, we could do a transform, or we could do a hybrid. But when we took a look at our actual situation, we had an infrastructure and a set of systems that were the result of a 20 years or 20 plus years of a multinational company doing business. They were acquiring other businesses, which would mean we would inherit solutions. They would change technology partners, we would change standards, we would change tool sets. And every time that happened, nobody goes back and reworks everything that's existing. You just take that point and you go forward from there. And so we ended up with essentially 14 different data silos. Every single one of them was on different technology and different versions of technology. In many cases, they were outdated versions of technology. We had 75-ish data sources feeding these systems. Many of those systems had copies of the same data. So we had 2, 3, 4, 5 copies of the same data across each one of those, with different slices of information, and in some cases, different KPI calculations. We had about 2,000 jobs that ran every night, and we were running on what I would consider to be kind of stick-built ingestion frameworks and using 6 different ETL tools. So if you look at kind of that super complicated infrastructure, we had a lot of pain points. We had inconsistent orchestration. We had poor air handling. We had a lot of failures. We were failing in our SLAs at some place around the globe literally every week, sometimes multiple times a week. We didn't have the subject matter experts for all the different technologies, because some of these systems had been built 10, 15 years ago. So we lost all the business knowledge, we lost all the technical knowledge, and we were essentially trying to keep it in a life support mode most of the time. We had a lot of failures. We had a lot of instability. We had long-running batches. We could not, in short, move at the speed of business, and it was very, very costly to run this platform. It was in the millions of dollars to run this every day. And so we had kind of, over the course of 5 to 10 years, lost a lot of the trust of our business partners. And we wanted to get all of that back. We wanted to address all of these pain points as part of our separation. So the first thing we kind of recognized when we did all this is there's no way we can lift and shift what we have and be successful. That's just taking all of our problems and recreating them. So we didn't want to do that. But it's a pretty daunting task when you look at how much we had to move. And I'll give you another piece of information. We had a fixed budget and we had a fixed window to complete it. So realistically, from the point in time that we started planning our separation activities to when we had to be done and decommission all of the systems on the Johnson Controls side was a total of 17 months. So we took the first 4 months to do all of the planning and the platform selection and the vendor selection. And we took the rest of the time and we said, okay, that's what we're going to have to do the actual work. And to get into how are we going to do the separation, how are we going to run this thing, we knew we needed a partner. And so we kind of separated the work that had to happen into 2 key areas. The first was we had to have the right fit platform. And we took a lot of the pain points and flipped them around into the things that we didn't want and the things that we did want, kind of our as is and to be mentality. And we said, this is what a right fit platform looks like for Clarios. And then we also said, we need a right fit partner to do this with, because it's going to be a lot of change. It's going to be a very short period of time, relatively speaking, to get this done. And we needed somebody who was going to get Clarios as a customer and who was going to have, skin in the game to make us successful. And the reason this time frame was so important for us was the way that a separation works is at some point, every year you're paying to run the systems that you have until you can stand up your own. So we had to cut a check to Johnson Controls at a certain point that second year to pay for the next year's run costs. And we wanted to avoid cutting that check at all costs because, as I said, it was in the millions of dollars. So that was kind of our big motivator. And we tried to treat this as a kind of a do or die project. And the way we went about it, I think, is probably where the DataOps came in, because we kind of took a think, plan, do approach as a team. And the first thing we said was, well, let's look at everything that we have. Let's lay out all the architectures. Let's lay out all of the jobs and flows and all the tool sets. And let's document the whole thing. It's sort of a big as-is package. And then we wrap that into the RFI. And then we said, here's all the pain points that come with this architecture. And we wrap that in. And then we said, here's what we want to be when we grow up and when we get out of this separation. As we cross that finish line of separation, this is where we want to start for our business. And all of that got wrapped into this 50-plus page RFI and sent to 7 different providers that we wanted to talk to. And essentially we said to them, look, here's where we are. Here's where we want to be. You tell us how you would do it. You tell us how you would chart a course. What platform would you use? What tools would you use? And how would you make it happen over the course of the timeline that we have? So we literally gave them 2 constraints. You had to be done by a certain date, and it had to be in Microsoft Azure, because that was the cloud provider that our leadership had chosen for us to work with. Everything else was open for them. So the approach to running the selection, I think this is important because it kind of shows how we literally settled on the sort of the DataOps approach, or a platform-based approach, versus the sort of the build versus buy. We ran the typical process. We submitted the RFI. We gave them 2 weeks to respond in writing. Then we took a week. We reviewed. We scored. We put our questions together. We had the in-person presentation, question answer. We did the final scoring. And if you look on the right-hand side, you can see after the final scoring, there wasn't a lot of separation. So, you know, in general, they were very, very similar. Now, this doesn't necessarily take into consideration cost in that evaluation summary. We were simply looking at the platform and the provider side of things. So we found that we needed to do some delineation. So we recategorized, rescored a little bit around organizational fit and solution fit. And affordability played a big role here as well. But this is also where we said, we've seen enough, we know enough, we're going to make the call to go with Snowflake. And so that became one of the key decisions that we made right up front, even before we chose a provider. And that also selected out a number of providers because they didn't bring it up. And even when we asked them about it, that it wasn't their recommendation. So then the next thing we looked at was, because that really gave us 4 as opposed to 7. The next thing we looked at was the build versus buy. Do we want to build it? Do we want to staff the build side of it? Do we want to have all those technical experts that Andrew referred to? Do we want to go through that? Do we want to be an IT department or an analytics IT department? Or do we want to be a manufacturer who's got a really solid analytics system that we can run the way we want to run it and focus on manufacturing, focus on the data, and focus on solving problems? And at the end of those discussions internally, we said, we want to opt for less of the build it and more of the leverage tool sets, enterprise tool sets that can be there. So that narrowed us down to 2. And then after further discussions, we settled on Mosaic and LTI to do the work. And from our perspective, that was kind of the starting point of the journey of building. And so I'll talk a little bit about that journey of building. You know, there are kind of 2 different aspects of this that I'll focus on. The first one is removing the risk of the new platform. Now, one key thing to point out was on the infrastructure and the platform stand-up side, we were running in parallel to the infrastructure and the identity management security teams on the Clario side that were standing up all the new functionalities for the new business, building data centers, establishing all the practices. They brought in their own providers, and we had to build all of this stuff kind of at the same time. So we knew there was going to be a lot of bumps in the road as we were going down that path. So we said, we're going to build this thing, we're going to stand it up, we're going to do a proof of viability in the first 120 days. And if we can do that, and if we can be successful, we feel like we can get the rest of the work done in the time that's left. And so that's kind of the approach we took. At the same time that we were doing that, we had the analysts, the data analysts, the architects that were looking at the work and the what we call now the data products, but essentially the domain areas that were going to be migrated. And we had to have them cut things apart and figure out how could we segregate out all these different systems and all these different functional areas and try to deliver it rapidly. As you can see, there was, you know, every month for several months, we were delivering products. And we turned it into essentially a factory. And changing to the mentality of I'm thinking of a domain, I'm thinking of pipelines around that, as opposed to trying to build this whole complex thing and thinking about how I'm going to connect all these things later on. It really allowed us to move very rapidly. It allowed us to stand up quickly, test quickly, and implement quickly. And so there was a lot of benefits that we saw from the partnership that we had with Snowflake and LTI as part of that. I think the other thing that I would call out here is that from a team perspective and a staffing perspective, it allowed us to focus sets of people from business subject matter experts to data analysts to engineering leads within each of the data products. And it gave us the ability to have areas of specialty, and those specialties, those people that were charged with building them have remained the specialists as we've moved forward as well. So we developed sort of a domain-based approach to moving and dealing with the data. So that's the other thing that kind of addresses a lot of the problems that we had with partnering on the business side, because we didn't have a lot of that subject matter expertise. So we built it and we're leveraging it as we go forward now. So I'll talk a little bit about where we landed. this is a super high level, but essentially we migrated, 2,700 tables, 2,000 jobs, nearly 1,000 reports and dashboards. But we're on one platform. We have one standardized set of tools. We have one standardized approach. The inputs haven't changed, but the simplified processing of that has made a huge difference for us. Getting on enterprise tools that are on the latest versions has allowed us to drastically reduce the number of failures that we've been experiencing. The run costs are down 70% because number one, I don't have multiple different, data silos and technologies that I have to pay for. I have one. And that also results in quicker batch times too, because I don't have a lot of complexity. It's a very standardized approach. The other thing I think that it gives us is, from our team's perspective, we have one set of design and implementation standards, and it all flows based on the tool set and the platform that we have. So we've been able to build largely a factory type or data factory type of mentality. And we've been switching our organization to take advantage of that. From another team's perspective, when we were running in the old world, our architects and our subject matter experts spent probably 80% of their time chasing problems and trying to keep systems alive. Today, those guys are spending less than an hour a week on support. This is a highly stable system. It's highly efficient. We don't have to spend a lot of time trying to figure out what went wrong and how to recover from it. So the biggest thing that I would say, though, is from a business perspective, we've moved from a high cost, low value to quick turn and high value. And so we've regained their trust even over the last 8 months, 10 months that we've been running this. And we're able to focus on more of a data based approach, data product based approach, which is how they think, that's how they operate. And similarly, Andrew talked about, kind of a migration towards self-serve. For us, we have a lot of subject matter experts and data scientists that are cropping up inside the business areas. Having this type of approach allows us to service their needs just as rapidly as we're servicing other needs, because they're focused on the data. They want to see the data, they want to get it in hand, and we can do that much more quickly now that we've decoupled everything. And to kind of wrap it up, I just want to talk a little bit about kind of what did we gain from an insights perspective. And when I look at this, it's typically about the people, the process, and the technology. So we crossed the finish line on the separation, but from our business partners' perspective, that's really the starting line. And so as we've gone into what we'll call steady state mode, our goals haven't changed. It's always been speed to market, scalability, reliability, value, and affordability. And what we've been able to do with the new platform, in addition to the kind of the focus and changing, the business alignment and the teams, we segregate our workloads in Snowflake by the data pipelines. We have different warehouses for each one of the data products, so we can actually get to true cost that way. That's a big thing for us from an affordability perspective, because now I understand kind of my total cost of ownership at a data product level. So we can figure out, where are we driving the most value, where do we want to invest, or what is it going to take from a total cost to stand something new up. So that helps us on the planning side. But from a people perspective, what we've seen is a change in the approach to, number one, how we staff and how we run the organization. As I said, we're moving towards a data factory mentality. So we have fewer roles in the team with a wider scope in terms of what they take on and what they worry about. It's not so rigid anymore because the tool sets are flexible enough that they can wear a lot of hats and be very effective. The other thing I would say is, when I look at how the tools are changing, how the industry is changing, we can focus on developing new skills in the team, and they can pick them up rather quickly. It hasn't been a massive leap in terms of changing the team over from what we had, whether it was Oracle or any of the other technologies that we used. It hasn't been a big leap. It's actually been a breath of fresh air for them, because everything is always, this is so much easier to do now. And that's the key thing for me, is that we're trying to move fast. I like to hear that it's easy to do and it's supportable. From a process perspective, we've been able to slim down some of our processes. We develop lightweight processes and standardized approaches to things. And that gives us much more predictable outcomes and gives us a very big focus on quality as the endpoint. We've been able to implement DevOps, which from our perspective allows us to go that much faster and continue that migration towards a factory mentality. And the other thing for us is we've been able to heavily focus on optimizing our support. I mean, at the end of the day, if these things run on time and everything is calculating and running correctly and the output is what the business is expecting, I don't hear anything. But when we were back as part of JCI, every week I was sending emails to one of the business partners explaining what was going on, what we were doing to fix it, and how we were going to try to stabilize this to keep it from happening. From a technology perspective, it's allowed us to minimize tool sets and design patterns and shift our focus, as I've talked about. But the other thing is it's faster to implement. And an example of that is recently Snowflake has enabled push-down optimization. And with the platform that we're using with Mosaic, we've been able to easily test, just swapping out the processing engine that we're using to do an A/B comparison and see what the value is. And we can look at the actual warehouses themselves to see what the cost differential is. And so it's been a very easy thing for us to go in and do A/B comparisons. We didn't have to rewrite everything. It's some configuration changes, some testing, and then we can build the plan and move. And that's been a huge change for us, because before it would be like, okay, we got to step back. We got to spend a lot of time. And the biggest thing for us, where I'd say we are benefiting the most, is our architects know where our costs and where the levers are. They are deeply involved in what it costs to run this. They're looking at those costs, and as they're making decisions about architecture, they're pulling those in. So, in short, we had a very successful journey. We stood up a lot of technology in a very short period of time. We did it very successfully. And at the end of that journey, and now 8 months down the road, we are transitioning even more. It's been a continuous improvement thing for us. So with that, I will turn it back over to Vince.
That was it's a great story. We have one more poll that we'd like you to participate in. This one is around your level of interest in trying out Mosaic Decisions plus Snowflake to explore the kind of solution we've been talking about. So we've got 3 options here. Proof of concept is where our consultants will come in and take your data and a use case and help you assemble the platform to take a look at it. The second one is a free trial, so more of a traditional 14-day free trial where you can get the access to the software and play around with it yourself. And then the third option is if you just want to learn more about the platform and how it can help, we would be happy to schedule some time to talk about that. So anyone who is interested in any of these options, please enter your response into the poll, which you can see on the right side of your screen. If you can't see the poll on the right side of the screen, you might have to click on, there's a little tab that says polls at the top, I think. And we'll give a few seconds for that to happen. I'm going to go ahead and not tell any more data science jokes during that time. I had a joke about deep learning, but I can't explain it, so I'm not going to tell it. Okay. I think please go ahead and continue to enter your poll results if you'd like to do that. And I think we can go roll over to the Q&A now. We got several good questions that have come in through the direct channel and also some on the chat line. So I will just go ahead and send those out, or I will go ahead and state them for the panel here to respond to. So first question we have is from Ankito. What best practices would you recommend to reduce friction between various machine learning and AI artifacts and platforms so that DataOps work in symphony? That might be a good Sachin or Andrew question.
Sure. Thanks, Vince. I can take a stab at that. No, I think, as I think Jeff explained, I think what I tried to cover, what Andrew said, I think the whole data products ecosystem is the way everybody is going towards. And as you go along that, the separation of duties between data engineering, machine learning, and finally delivering the end business data product is reducing. It's more converging. While the roles are different, people playing those roles and work are different. They have to be converged. And if you recall my first slide that I tried to present, where there is a data ops, there is a ML ops, there is a model ops. So all of that has to be connected very, very seamlessly. One of the ways to do that is, again, thinking data ops platform in such a way that exposing the data, making it easily available for data scientists, provisioning for them to do their work on that is sort of inherent components of data ops technology stack. And that's one important aspect, to address to fill this gap or, reduce the friction, I would say.
Andrew or Jeff, do you have anything to add to that? Okay. We have another question. What would you say to organizations that want to do this journey on their own in terms of not using a partner? What kind of long-term investment and goals are needed to do this kind of transformation on your own? Maybe this kind of speaks to Andrew's build versus buy, but anyone, of course, can chime in.
Yeah, I mean, we try to build a solution that's super easy to use and doesn't require expertise, but it's also this is such a complicated category, right? And we've really been seeing the value and importance of data as such an important success criteria for a business. In our market, being able to change quickly can mean the difference between survival and failure. And so while we try to make it easy from the platform perspective, it's always helpful to have a second set of eyes and more broader experience from other implementations to really know how best to use data. And so we really value the experience that our partners bring to the table and see that companies who go into transformation like this with a broad range of expertise and a broad range of viewpoints generally have more success. So we love it when companies work with our partners. And as easy as we try to make the platform, there's still plenty of help that customers benefit from. So definitely it's not every one of our customers that uses a partner, but it definitely often correlates with better results.
So Andrew, I think the question also wanted to know if they're gonna hire folks, what kind of folks should they hire to marshal this?
Yeah, well, we try to make it easy that you don't need to hire developers and engineers to build code. Everything that you do in Snowflake can be done in SQL. So in a lot of cases, the same people that are going to ask questions of data using SQL skills is also the people that are going to do a good job kind of configuring the platform and being administrators of the platform. So our system is really designed to be run by data specialists rather than platform specialists. And so that's what we like to see people focused on is, having the power to both ask the right questions as well as know how to get those questions to work well. And then often, having a partner will allow you to get a little bit of boost in terms of optimization. So yeah, we really like to see domain experts as the focus for hiring, and less focus on system experts.
Okay.
I guess if that answers the question.
Sachin, anything to add to that?
No, I think Andrew covered that, and maybe one little nuance to that is what Jeff explained very well in his story. It depends on what the success looks like. If the success is going to be more about business transformation, focusing more on domain-driven data products, then naturally the choice is towards picking up the right technologies, right DataOps platform capabilities, and then focus more on building domain data products.
Thank you.
So I think
I want to make sure we get a
that's
question
an add-on
from here. We have a couple related to business impact, business benefit. So Jeff, the gist of it, the couple of questions that have come in are, what was the most significant business benefit you saw? and what kind of, other business impacts maybe around, you talked a lot about TCO and, efficiency and accuracy and stuff. Are there any, can you speak to any business benefits around maybe like revenue or, how has this facilitated growth for the company?
Probably the easiest way to answer that is to say, by being able to move, what we say here is kind of move at the speed of business. By being able to turn requests for new information, new data sets quickly, or leverage existing data sets maybe more extensively, by not having all the encumbrances that we had in the old system, we can go faster. We can get them the answers and get them the data so they themselves can get to the answers faster. So a lot of what we've heard is, getting it to that first answer is faster, but getting to the second and third, the answers to the second, third, and fourth questions that they ask once they see that first, piece of information, that's going faster too. And those are the things that, as they start to gain the insights and they can, turn that much more quickly, that's really been the big one. I mean, obviously the run costs and the stable environments and the reduction in the number of people on the team, all of those things are great, but they don't matter if you're not getting the business what they need to do their job and make decisions. And so we're finding that we're able to do that much more effectively and much more.
Yeah, and that actually speaks to another question that came in terms of continuous value addition. Just like you said, being able to go at steady state faster, after the initial startup. I think we maybe time for one more, and I think this one also, Jeff, is referring to your slides. It was mentioned that the processing engine was swapped to use the power of Snowflake. Where was that done in your architecture? Is that?
It's actually a configuration on the job itself. You tell it which processing engine you want to use. It's probably a little bit of simplification, but that's essentially
okay. Well, we are at the end of our time, and I want to thank all of our panelists, Jeff, Andrew, Sachin. This has been a really interesting session for me, and I'm sure that our audience has enjoyed it as well. Thanks everyone for joining. We've had some great participation, some good questions come across. And we will be following up with all the attendees. We'll be sharing the webinar recording, and we also have a white paper that we'll be sharing with you in the near future that is based on a lot of what we talked about here. So look for that in your inboxes. And thanks everyone. Appreciate your time. And we'll log off now. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you. Right. Thank you.